have a problem!
Hello, Twitter. Do you want to see this humorous Kaufmo meme I created? Look, he's doing 6'7".
Look, Jax, I know we don't get along. Not now, Kane. We have a serious problem.
A problem? Well, why didn't you just say so?
Just look at this.
Oh no! And what's the problem with this exactly?
Well, it ruins her character.
But how?
'Cause she's bad trans rep. I thought Jax was trans mask.
Oh, you would like a trans mask, wouldn't you? Haha, wow, you guys, you really are hilarious. Yes, they're an awful person, but how does that make them rep?
Sorry, I made it again. Hey guys, don't leave me out of the video. Wait, what video?
Congratulations, all of my friends.
And that, my
Rubber Baby Buggy Bumpers,
is Jack's discourse in a nutshell right now. While it is really funny to me that Gooseworks hates their fans so much that they post this the day after the hard launch of the finale and stir up all the controversy that was already there, I think this reveal is a lot less deep than people have made it out to be. In general, Jax has received a lot of hate over the last couple of weeks, and while I understand it, I believe despite being a pretty awful person, they are very possibly the best written character in the entire series, and certainly have the most intriguing psychology of any character involved despite claims otherwise. First, I want to make it clear that a character being a completely unlikable person does not disqualify them for being a well-written character, and for some reason, fans tend to emotionally equivocate personal dislike to a writing issue, and I think that's absolutely a problem in today's culture. However, it seems that not everyone has picked up on all the context clues of Jax as the character and also don't relate to him entirely, so for that reason, I believe many people really misunderstand Jax, and so my goal here is to give you a better understanding of why Jax as a character works so well in the digital circus. Despite being a protagonist in the second half, you may have noticed that Jax doesn't fit the hero or villain role in this story. Neither does he fit something like an anti-hero or anti-villain, and instead he works in one of the most charismatic archetypes in fiction, the Trickster. If you were wondering what a Trickster archetype is, generally it's a character who disrupts the story status quo and makes a mockery of other characters and violate societal norms in general. They use their cunning and witty personality to force growth in others, and even sometimes themselves. I believe this all fits Jax, and he is incredibly good at this too, being a very funny and very meta character, which I think are two very underappreciated aspects in any character in media, and not to mention his sex appeal.
What are you talking about?
But the defining aspect of a trickster that I think embodies his importance to the narrative most is his role as the self-proclaimed shapeshifter. And I don't mean that literally, rather Jax leading up to the finale is constantly wearing different masks, and often in psychology when a person does this, it is due to deep insecurity and guilt regarding their real self. And that immediately makes Jax a very mysterious character behind his hilarious persona covered in a world of sarcasm, which I definitely relate to as a very sarcastic person myself, but Jax fittingly chooses to play a role in the circus to distance himself as far away from his real self as he possibly can, to a point that when his real self is revealed to others, he cannot handle it and has to lock in to put the mask back on. He has such an aversion to his own kind that when a character whose personality literally depends on the physical mask that they're wearing, he immediately makes them a target for his abuse. In fact, he does this to the two characters with the biggest identity issues in the cast, being Gangula and Zubul, who struggle with their identity due to the literal physical traits that are out of their control, and he targets them the most despite suffering from the very similar issues of identity, but instead it is in a metaphysical sense, and he struggles ultimately by his own choice. Jax really is a master at projection, which again helps explain why he's a jerk in general. He can't be comfortable in his own skin, so he covers it up by chastising those not comfortable in their own. And the entire point of this being showcased seems to be how Gangula and Zubul found solidarity and supported each other to the point of comfort through Jax's incessant bullying, while Jax became even less comfortable and closeted by pushing them away, ultimately making their own own mental condition worse. It is amazing how throughout the series that Jax's actions lead to the other characters growing by not acting like him, and I think that sets them up nicely as a contrast of what is and what is not a healthy way to deal with your problems, and how this also reflects that in each and every character. Now, I'm not going to cover how this happens with every character, but I will use a couple more examples as the video goes on. Now, of course, Jax has made some very poor decisions, and none of this video is excusing his abusive actions, but I think many of us can find the self-destructive nature of wearing masks very relatable. Notably so in an era where it's so hard to accept ourselves and feel accepted by everyone around us. I also think this makes Jax the most relatable character in the entire series. Now,
I know that sounds bad,
but I don't mean it in a sense that we should strive to be like Jax, absolutely not. Being awful as they were to others and themselves led to serious consequences, being their own self-inflicted death through abstraction, and instead I think they serve as a cautionary tale to those who suffer from the same psychological boundaries of living through life as a stage play. In the beginning, we actually see Jax chastise his Pomni for believing the circus is a dream.
She still thinks this is a dream.
And that they take nothing seriously, and while these actions and personality traits do make Jax a very meta character, it precisely is because they have created barriers of denial to justify their own abusive actions, which is exactly what an abuser would do, by the way. And I think this is a very real example of abusive character in media, and is a very well written example at that. We see this all come to a climax in the Abel episode, actually, when the cast convinces Jax, unintentionally so, that everything around them has been real after all. Even if Jax knew it deep down all along, they now believe that their actions, in fact, had real world consequences, leading Jax into a self-hatred spiral in the background, and we see Jax became increasingly unpleasant and insecure with their social standing among the cast. Rightfully so, because to be honest, he deserves it. However, they never seek out forgiveness because they know they do not deserve it, and eventually this leads to a spiritual death through the means of abstraction. I also think this is why Jax is not an evil character, but rather falls into the category of chaotic neutral, and I love my little chaotic neutral brothers, let that be known. But besides that, the fact that Jax withdraws as a remorseful response to their actions, and while Jax does hurt others and often claims that they want to see them suffer, for the most part it's simply out of amusement and ignorance of the possibility of real consequences to their actions. In fact, throughout the entire series, we still see Jax shows occasional moments of camaraderie, and really they just act out of boredom rather than seeking out the worst for others, and all of these are, I believe, good, neutral reasons to believe that they don't act out of malice, but instead in self-preservation in their nihilistic worldview. Now that I've explained that away, I want to return to the process of what it means to recognize a well-written, irredeemable protagonist, and with that, I think of characters like Endeavor from Boku no Hero Academia, as it is appropriately called, because as you know, I never want to upset my good friend called Fandom Twitter, and definitely didn't try to do that in my intro bit. Back on the subject of Endeavor, he is a beautifully flawed character, but is incredibly disliked by those who are closest to him and fans alike. Endeavor is, for all intents and purposes, a completely unlikable character throughout the majority of the series, and is seen as a narcissistic, abusive madman to his family, and seemingly has no business being a hero despite the raw talent and effort he puts towards that occupation. However, we get to see how Endeavor is changed by those around him, catalyzed by, of course, his youngest son, in his hero's journey. And Endeavor is a character, while he does not deserve forgiveness from his family for his abuse, even if he does make the effort to change and follow through, which he does, eventually, while not perfectly, his family is willing to recognize that change and extend that undeserved grace to Endeavor. And while, yes, again, I understand he did not deserve the forgiveness he received from some of his family, I think there's a very powerful message in that. He's dropped his old self and has picked up a new path. The old Endeavor is being shed, and he cannot be treated precisely as that same person, and he cannot be enabled to move on from his past if there is no way forward. And that is why forgiving someone who does not deserve forgiveness is such a freeing and powerful decision to make, especially for the person forgiven if they have remorse for their actions, which is what makes redemption in fiction and real life so compelling in a narrative. But with Jax, we do not get to see the results of his change, and honestly, it's somewhat late for that. But despite abstraction being a death of sorts, Jax actually has been reborn as well. They make the decision to to turn around and change from their vice of masking their pain by inflicting it on others, and Pomni eventually accepts it, leading to a satisfying ending to their character arc. In this, Jax faces consequences of their actions, but now has a way forward, which I think is a perfectly satisfying end to their character arc in the series. And a lot of people complained about them not getting consequences for their awful behavior, and to that, I'm genuinely curious if they watched the same series as I did, because they pretty much lost everything and caused themselves to die in the only way one can in a circus. Additionally, Jax would probably be trapped in the cellar forever if it weren't for Pomni's sympathy and Jax's decision to change. Now, one definitely may object, well, we don't know if they would have stayed on that path, and I actually completely disagree, surprise, surprise, because we see how in real life they carried on and had made close friends in the process. We know they aren't a bad person deep down. We know that when they are not masking themselves to that extent anymore, that they appear to be a truly better person, and it seems the circus members recognize this too, keeping them around and adding Jax to the mural and other little obvious pieces of visual info we are given at the end. My point with all of this is that first, Jax, again, is a cautionary tale of what it looks like to bottle up your guilt and insecurities to an extreme, and how that hurts not only yourself, but others around you. But it also is a tale of how powerful repentance coupled with forgiveness is, especially when that forgiveness was not earned, and how freeing that is to the person when you've spent basically your entire life burdened by these feelings. Lastly, in the intro, I really talked a lot about Gooseworks' post confirming Jax is trans, and while I was having a lot of fun there, I want to be a little serious about this for a second because I am a very serious person. But my point is that this post made a lot of people from all sides of the internet upset in some way, shape, or form. And the fact is, we don't know, while some of this post is obviously true, we don't know how much of this is Gooseworks trolling, because this is something they often do, especially concerning character sexuality. Now, I think the timing was definitely rage bait in some sense, but I want to make it clear that whether the post was fully serious or not, this does not hurt the writing of Jax. First of all, this is an alternate timeline of what Jax would have been like if they didn't have any of their defining character flaws. Second, if they are trans, like I pointed out in the intro, they are not trans representation. In the same way, Walter White is not representation for high school teachers. They both transcend their identities and do not represent their demographic as a whole, and boy, does Jax make a mark as their own person, heavily impacting and directing the cast as a whole with their antics, I'd say more than anyone else in the series besides Kane. Truly, they are the standard for the tragic trickster in any sort of media. With that, please share your thoughts in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this discussion and want to see more of this series where I analyze misunderstood characters in animation, please like and subscribe, as I will continue to provide increasingly refined content. I mean, this is my second video ever, and I'm trying to make gradually higher quality videos for you guys because I think that would be really fun, and I hope you guys also enjoy this type of content. And if you made it to this point in the video, thank you all very much for watching. It truly means a lot. I hope I was able to provide
You, the viewers,
with a deeper understanding of this complex character who is so frequently mischaracterized online. And again, I truly appreciate your time. And for the Deltarune fans among you in the video, the next video will be a Deltarune character analysis of Flowery. So if you want to see that, please subscribe, because that will be out a week after this video, hopefully. Until then, see ya, Space Cowboys!